You know, I was so excited to work today, and I knew I had a lot left to do that I couldn't sleep, but then I spent the first half of the day having to kind of rest because I was just so tired. Talk about irony there. Last video, we put the transmission together. Did I say that right? Transmission, yes. And then today I'm gonna mount it to the engine. It doesn't help that it's 101 degrees, so let's caffeinate, hydrate, procreate, recreate. One of those 8s. And now it's time for clutches. The 8-bolt flywheel, all the bolts are metric, and boy am I glad I have the hardware for it. But it's an M14 on those big boys there in the middle. My goodness, can you believe I think that the 850 5-cylinder engines and onward were like 10 bolts. I mean, there's no space between the bolts, and they really clamped down on it. So it's kind of interesting how they went up in size and in number as the years progressed. So this is my clutch assemblage. That's the one I got on eBay. That's the original one to Amy. No good. Small disc, wrong disc from a B18, B20, which is like 10 millimeters smaller. That's one from Danny, an old Borg and Beck, and then that's the larger disc there. This, unfortunately, is a 240 clutch. It's got finer splines. Naturally, the disc is also pretty tiny. So that just sort of ended up in the parts haul. We've got ourselves at least 2 options. That one says 1969 to 1972 B30. I'm nervous that it might not fit. Let's just find out. Let's see how she does. 430123. And that's IMR with a Volvo sticker on it. Borg and Beck Company. Here we go. Type 9/9.5 DS. 1 hole, 2 hole, 3, 4, few, and 6. We are in business. We've got ourselves a clutch that will cooperate. Beautiful. This is why it ends at 1972. The B30 and the B30A, 9-inch clutch diameter. The E and F gets a 9.5-inch. So let me see between the two, which one of these is going to be the larger. They're probably going to be identical. And it's a shame I don't get the extra 1/2 inch. All right. Oh, would you look at that? Looks like I do get the extra 1/2 inch from my eBay clutch. Good on them. Looks like there's room for the extra 1/2 inch here. Let's find out. There's about 1/8 of an inch all around, but I think that means she fits. Since that disc is matched to this one, yes, the same story here. So what about you? How much smaller is this? Nope, it's still the wrong disc that came in the car. You see the extra 10 millimeters there? Well, I think I've pieced that together nicely, and the last thing I'll do is confirm with an actual tape measure. 9.5. So what are some of the problems that we could have based on some of these differences? Would it be binding in the clutch? Would it be fitment issues? Or would it be clearance issues? Like if the distance between the throwout bearing isn't right, some of that can be corrected with, because of a thicker clutch pack or whatever. Some of it can be corrected with the screw adjustment on the top of the cable to the fork. So I'm not terribly concerned. I'm not piecing together random part numbers or like, this is a General Motors part that happens to be the same dimensionally and with the same number of splines. I'm actually using Volvo stuff, but it's just early model versus late model. Looks like everything's there to fit well. I'm double checking everything that I went through on the transmission because I've got 2 O-rings and a copper washer left over. I don't like that. Sometimes it just be that way. And there's also this gasket, which is the outer flange gasket. I think the D Type might have a similar mount. So it looks like they included 2 for the trans. That would be this one here. There's 2 kinds, and I'm guessing one of them fits better, the M410s, and then the other one's for the early style trans. I don't know. Just kind of unsure at this point. But looks like everything got a new seal in it, so I can't be too upset. There's no overdrive solenoid copper washer. Seems like you got to buy that one separately. I didn't like that. I'll tell you what, I should have sold tickets to that wrestling match. This was awful. It was like 3 hours, maybe, to get this bolted up. And here's the drama. When you put in the alignment tool, it sounds pretty straightforward. You put it in, the small end goes to the pilot bearing, and then the rest centers the clutch. Only that it had this little bit of wiggle, and that little bit of wiggle was what was causing it to not line up with the transmission. It would spline, you know, you could just keep it in fourth gear and turn the tail shaft, and that splines the trans, but then it wouldn't line up with this little guy. Even though the input shaft of the trans is more of a taper than the tool, but whatever. Okay, so the only thing that really kept me calm, because let me tell you, my back hurts, my shoulders hurt, I think that's it. I almost debated just stopping here. Now, I'm not going to push myself to the point where I get an injury, because that's way against the desired effect. The only thing that kept me sane in those few hours was just George Michael and Andrew Ridgely. But really, I had to unbolt the clutch 2 times, and every time I did that, I would center it a little bit and then torque it, and then I made the mistake once of getting it most of the way on. I was like, I think it needs to just be depressed, which is why the big pipe is hanging out the clutch fork. I was like, I just need to release it so it helps it center, but what happened is it just dropped even more, so that made it worse, and the bottom half was just sticking out too much. Anyway, I finally got it, and I think everything's okay, but the reason I say think is that there are 2 centering pins. One of them is here, and then on the other side, and they were giving me a lot of resistance, and I'm hoping that's what was giving me resistance. Otherwise, something else was not happy to spline in. But the engine turns over, the transmission turns over, it turns with and without the clutch, it turns in gear, everything seems okay. The important thing is that, yeah, as soon as you start butting up against those pins, you'll have that much of a gap, but anything larger than those pins, you should not bolt to take up that gap. It should just slide in all the way up to the pins. The bolts help to get it started, but honestly, there's so much wiggling and maneuvering. This thing really helps, because that saved me from having to basically lift the trans and try to dance it in there. But keeping it down here, I don't know. I do have a trans jack adapter. I don't know if that would have helped much, because I do need a big wide surface so that I could keep that and kind of roll it around, because the engine is at a slight angle. It actually looks like it's a B230 right now, the way it's slanted. So that's it. It's ready. Moving it in now. I think this was the hard part. Getting it into the car, I think, should be an easy part. Oy. And as the sun graces us with another reddish setting, a little bit of more smoke has come into town. No big deal. But this begins Act 3 of my day. I'm going to try to work quickly because I had a real war with some roaches last night. Question for you. If a lizard eats a roach that I soaked in roach killer, will the lizard die? Asking for a friend. So moving on to the engine. She's off on her own. If you want to talk about attention to detail, maybe not. But I can't have things look sloppy or just hang. So if there's a wire that needs to be run, like my solenoid wire, it's got to have an insulated P-clamp. The side going up to the switch, there were 2 holes here. Don't know what they were for. I also don't know what the grinder marks were for. That's interesting. This doesn't use a crank switch, so I don't know. But that is the other half of the wire. This will go up under the dash somewhere. And I'm working on some of the little bits and pieces that I should put on now, like this. Water pipe needs to get changed. And I put the temperature sensor on. I have several, but only this one is the only one for the early cars, unless I pull hers, and I won't do that to her. It's so close. I've just run out of clearance to rotate the chain anymore. I want to try to get a few more turns out of it. Ugh, it sucks by yourself though. You may notice I do this a lot in the times I walk around. It's not because I have a neurological disorder, it's because these gloves are constantly trying to fall off my hands, so by doing this, it kind of helps them pull right back down. Also, it's important to me to continually stretch my hands out because I'm getting carpal tunnel bad from all this wrenching. It's mostly just holding little things, especially when I'm cleaning bolts and nuts. Everything's got to be clean on this engine. It's heavier and it's longer than what came out. So not only is this, you know, going on 12 years old, I think, this Harbor Freight jack hoist, the attachment was $35. Kind of rolling the dice when you go to Princess Auto. It's 2 hours later, exactly, and the car is up in the air a little bit. I'm working on the transmission mounts. I've got the front mount here on one side, the side that was lower naturally, and then the other side's just chilling a little high. I think I can kind of get it to twist and fall in place, but I would need some sort of leverage and wrenches, and just want to be careful that I don't get my fingers anywhere, because it will drop in there nicely. Ooh, yeah, you know what? I have an idea. A friend of mine, Vanessa, sent me some music recommendations, and I'm not the biggest Alice in Chains fan, but 1994 seemed like a pretty good year for music, and I like when y'all send me stuff like that. So just gonna kind of finesse it into the hole there. Pop goes the weasel. Now the classic trick. Wow, she's got some lean on that one. But let's get that trans bolted up and it should be a-okay. Bit of a problem. The engine's in and it looks nice, and you know, once you get the transmission in place, these engine mounts do settle a little bit, which is good. Unfortunately, everything's new, all the rubber's peppy and perky, and these are the old ones here. You can see how they've sagged a little bit. See, it's kind of going downwards. Same with the other one. Well, long story short, the overdrive housing is hitting the bell housing, or the transmission tunnel. It's that final flange with those 6 little bolts, and it will definitely rattle and vibrate, so I need to remount the hole here to let this motor mount drop low, and then I need to do these 2 a little bit and probably put some washers here so I can get a 3-way effect lowering the whole thing. It's kind of silly, but that's the nature of the game right now. I don't like drilling. I don't have the patience for it. If I thought getting the engine with the 2 hours that it took was a long time, I kid you not, that crossmember was awful. Oh, just terribly. Yeah. See that? That's the whole saw kit. Oh, yeah. And you know what? I've got a battery in the fridge because things got hot. Oh, my goodness. I don't even know what time it is. I'm going to look right now. Oh, it could be 1 o'clock. It could be 3 o'clock. Okay, it's right in the middle. Okay. Well, I went from 10 usable fingers down to 8, and this is what I had to do. Yeah, pretend that this is the other one, which is narrow. The bolt for the mount, the brand new mount, okay, I considered going back to these mounts, but I was like, look, I paid $65. Let me get my $65. The stud for that bolt is probably the same length as these, but the crossmember is skinny, so yep, this is bigger on that mount, and the stud is this length, so it basically wouldn't seat on that surface because it kept butting up against the other side. Okay, so I took the hole saw and it made a really big hole. I tried to go for 1 inch and it just walked all over the place because I first did a 1/2 inch, and you need a good pilot or else your hole saw is gonna waller out, and it became basically this size. Uh-oh. I still think it has structural support, which is good. The holes here I had to remount in that direction, but I accidentally did it in this direction, so I had to go back and do it that way. And then on these guys, I just added 2 washers. The washers are not very thick. That's actually too thick. And they have helped create some clearance. So we're okay. We have some clearance. and we'll see just how it behaves. You're hearing the exhaust rattle, the valve cover rattle, a lot of rattling, but these mounts are pretty straight right now. And there was a lot of prying, there was a lot of rolling around on the ground. I mean, I have a mat, but oh, I hurt. This is probably worse than the transmission. Maybe not emotionally, but on my body, it was worse. Let's just, continue tomorrow with connections, and if we're lucky and everything goes well, we could have a first start, but I don't know. It might have to be Tuesday. As I'm cleaning up and putting everything away, I'm realizing that 683711, the part number for the transmission mount, that is the only one available, is not listed for the M410. And the smart ones among you will have noticed, as I was describing in the night before, my frustration with getting this whole thing mounted, that the transmission mount is actually a different size for the M410. It is about 10 millimeters skinnier, maybe a 1/4 inch. How about that? I have all that frustration and modification because I couldn't order a new one of these. This one might be fine to use, but I'm not doing that. It's already in. It's in. We're going to hope for the best. And if it does rattle and shake, then yes, I will put that one in. But I'm still thinking, even with this, I don't know, I should have measured them side by side when the new one was out. Maybe I could tell in the clip, but the new mount there shouldn't be too much of a problem with all the work I just put into it. Actually, scratch all that. They might be different sizes. They might not be. I don't know. Actually, you know what's funny? I just flipped these over. All of my M410 parts have these yellow markings on them, CAS, probably like California Auto Salvage or whatever company was the junkyard that the whole swap was sourced from. But it seems the bigger one of these two is the one that came with my M410 swap kit. So maybe I know nothing. Perhaps. Now this is my last order for now of the VP Auto Parts stuff. I have the overdrive speedometer cable. I have my steering ends for the tie rod ends, and I have my steering links. We've got 2 rubber boobies here. Where else are you gonna get these? Come on. These are for the door switches. There should be a door switch in here, right? There it is. Wow, it's right in front of me. 5 amp fuses, where else are you gonna get those? The best relays, honestly. These are great prices too. And we have, one of my favorite things. It's still a Volvo packaging, and it's like $8. It's so good. Or maybe it was a little more, I don't know. But this is the double fuse accessory panel for me fog lights. And it's gonna mount beautifully right here. And that's it. That's all my VP stuff. So next time, we're going to get right into assembling everything here, because we are at that point. I need a break, got to rest my body. Ouch. Everything's going well. I should have got mud flaps too. Maybe I could borrow someone else's, First things first, let's get her on the road.